Welcome back, everybody, to our second part of the professional development seminar. It's Making Team Projects Work, but this time online with Lauren and me again. So welcome back. Now, like before, this is based on our recently released book. Now, the book is on Amazon. The ebook right now is only $2.99, and the print book only $9.99. Eventually, the ebook will go up, but the introductory cost for the ebook is only $2.99 right now. The book has 13 chapters to it, and in our last session, we covered basically 12 of those chapters in a very short time. This time, we're really taking chapter 11 about online team projects and exploding that for this project. So that's the goal of this session today, is to focus on team projects online.
So we're really happy again to be with you, and we're going to do something with a similar structure to what we did last time, but obviously focusing on online. So we're going to start with exercise. Whoops, sorry. And then we're going to talk about some of these issues with working online in groups and teams and things that we have experienced, and we're sure that many of you have experienced. Then we're going to talk about some of the best practices for virtual group work and a final exercise with our key takeaways. And of course, we're always happy to answer questions when we're done with this particular session. So we're going to start out the way we did before. I don't know how many groups we're going to have now at this point, Tim, but we're going to ask people individually to think about what's one struggle that you've had with doing group work in classes online. And that could be either a hybrid course when you move the classes online or a totally online class. What's one struggle you've had with having your groups do work in those classes? And then what's one area of success? So we'll give you a couple of minutes to think about it, jot it down.
Okay, that's just about 2 minutes. So we're following the same process as before. We are going to put you into 2 breakout rooms and give you 5 minutes to talk about your experiences. Once again, please pick one person to briefly present for your group when we come back after the 5 minutes. I have randomly created the breakout rooms and they are all open, so you can join them now. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, hopefully you have picked your person to speak for your group. So let's hear from the first group.
All right, I'll go. I think in summary, what works well is when people are prepared for the contents on the student side, and then technology for both students and the faculty, especially for online. We're all new to that. Make sure the technology actually works. So that goes for issues to challenges when people are not prepared, whether it's the content related materials or it's technology. That's when we have issues, glitches. So I think that's it, right? Anything else you guys want to add?
Those are big. Good. Okay, let's hear from the other group.
Yeah, so for us, we felt like some of the things that worked well were ease of moving around between the groups, because very frequently we'll be working with somewhere between 12 to 18 groups. And when we're in a traditional classroom setting, like getting to all of those people can be extremely challenging. And so this was better. The thing that we found, though, is that in a lot of these group settings, the divide and conquer strategy was completely clear, even when we had made an effort to make it hard to do the divide and conquer strategy. And a lot of times when we would go visit the students in their rooms to check in on them, no cameras, everybody muted, not a word of conversation actually happening.
Oh,
Definitely
that's hard.
that, yeah. Okay, any other comments that anybody wants to make? Things that you're remembering from the discussions? All right. Well, thanks for that, getting us started and talking about some of the issues that we're going to be talking about in a little more detail. This is Tim, my slides are in advance. Oh.
There you go.
That was, okay. So that's some of the technology issues that we have all experienced. So last time we talked about the IPO model. We're not going to go through it again. One of the points we just really want to make is that the input, process variables, outputs, they all apply to groups online or virtual, as well as groups face-to-face. So you have to be thinking about those inputs into what happens when the group gets together. You have to be thinking about those process variables as well as the task outcomes. So all the elements are present with virtual groups. And even though we've been emphasizing and we sent out everybody chapter 11 for the book, we do keep going back to that on different chapters, talking about, you know, online tasks and motivation online and that sort of thing. So let's talk about some of the issues that we have with virtual group work. And even if you actually haven't done any virtual group work or group work online, you've probably seen a lot of these things when you've been in Zoom meetings or had a Zoom class. And the first one, miscommunication, misinterpretation. It's really easy for this to happen because you can see these issues happening when people's video breaks up or you can't hear them or they forget to unmute. And there's so many things that happen when you don't have the nonverbal cues that you have in a face-to-face setting. People in little boxes, you just don't get the same thing with, you know, with eye contact and facial expressions and that sort of thing. Also, this helps the group, leads the group to being more disorganized. It's just harder for people to, for the group itself to actually get organized in working on their task. There's also something that happens that is called de-individualization. And this is where people are feeling not really connected to the group, or they don't really feel a whole lot of motivation to be part of the group when it's virtual or online. And I think this is especially true if we have a lot of asynchronous group work that people are doing. We also see a lot of enhanced social loafing. So I don't know how many of you are actually with us today, but also texting or reading email, or maybe even doing some online shopping. And this is what happens. People, it's so easy for people to do that sort of thing when they are in a remote setting. We also find that groups tend to want to, the group members want to work separately rather than together. And we've had situations where we've given groups class time and said, this is time to work on your project. And they'll say, oh, we just created a Google Doc and everybody's going to put their stuff in there. I see a couple of people nodding. So they seem to like to do that. And we're like, this is a group project, and trying to emphasize having them get together that way. And obviously there's a whole lot of distractions. So my home office actually faces the front of my house. So I get to see the neighbors walking by with their new puppy. And I see my husband came back recently from a bike ride. He's a really hardy guy. And Tim and I meet regularly over Zoom this summer. And he has a cat named Calvin who always likes to visit. So the first thing I see is this tail come up, and then Calvin comes across the screen. And so we have to stop what we're doing to talk about how Calvin is he having a good day? And we've got all of these distractions going on, especially when we're working from home, or some of you working from your practice sites. It makes it really difficult. This all slows down group work. And so it just doesn't proceed as quick a pace as if you were all sitting around a conference table and working on your project together. And this also leads to a lot of leadership challenges, whether or not you have an appointed leader or you're waiting for a leader to emerge, which is what usually happens in student groups. It's a lot more difficult because of all these other issues with group work. So now that we have pointed out some of the problems, we have some best practices to share.
So the best practices, we're going to go through this list fairly quickly because the next 4 slides that we're going to talk about dive into this in detail. So the first one is that if you can, you want to initiate your teams with face-to-face meetings. You want to kick off with those. And related, you want to have regular face-to-face meetings when you can. Now, Lauren will talk more about that next, about how to do that, especially in an online setting. After that, we really stress that it's important to include extra work on team building, and we'll talk more about some ideas for you there. Now, after team building, you want to make sure to know your tools. We heard about this from one of the groups, that the technology can be both good and bad. So know your tools, the asynchronous and synchronous tools, and then teach to those tools. It helps to reduce those tech problems. And more important, help the students to pick the tool that goes with each part of the task. Now, two more are this problem with organization. Remaining organized when working online is really important for both you and the students, and make sure to have somebody in your groups, a leader who not only knows the content, but also understands the virtual work and has done it before. So next, Lauren's going to talk about the importance of face-to-face time.
So as Tim mentioned, whoops. As Tim mentioned, we really like to emphasize getting groups together face to face. And when you can't, initially, you might need to use synchronous video, and that's okay. But it's important to schedule early meetings with the team and have them get a chance to get to know each other, get to know the task, how everybody's working. I know that back in March, when we abruptly went online, it was almost seamless in some of my classes because we'd already been together face to face. I was using team-based learning, and the teams had gotten together. They had an identity, they had a name, they had a logo, they'd done a bunch of projects together. And so it was a whole lot easier when we got together online to foster more of that group culture and the group activity. Whereas now it's more difficult when you don't have a chance to get people together face to face. So we really stress initial meetings early on in the group project and ongoing meetings. So even if you are teaching a lot of asynchronous material in your group, in your remote classes, you want to make sure that you're scheduling it times for the groups to get together. This helps to build their identity and build the team culture. Tim's going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute when he talks about how we can foster some of those things. One other thing is we really try to do at the very first meeting of the group is we emphasize establishing a common meeting time. And we say to everybody, get your phone out, look at your calendar, find a time when everybody in your group can block out for the team to meet. And it could be Sunday night at 11 o'clock. We know that's the time a lot of our students are working, or sometimes it could be 2 a.m. from some of those messages I get. But we want to make sure that they have blocked out time, that this is important enough that there should be time for the team to get together. And even in the early stages of the project, they may not need that time, but it's important to have them establish a regular time. And so we're going to talk now about some of the ways that teams can do team building activities.
Team building is even more important online than it is in face-to-face groups, because these groups don't really get together, and to help them understand a team identity, it takes some time to help them to work together, to learn about each other, learn about each other's skills. And one thing we heard last time in our session was this idea of, in Wegman School of Pharmacy, group work versus teamwork. And these team building activities can help you to move some of your teams, at least, or groups, to teams and help them create that team identity. In addition, in times like this where everybody's working virtually, I know that team building that I get involved with can help people to feel supported. A lot of our students feel isolated and alone in their work. And so anything we can do as instructors to help them feel more support really helps them as students. So some ideas for you in your classes to help your teams develop. Now, some of these are really good up front, some of these are really good later, some are really good when people don't know each other, and some are really good when people know each other. Some are very quick little hits, some take some time. That's why we're putting out 8 possibilities for you so you can see different ideas. So first, something that should be done early on with your teams, is to give them structured time to develop norms. What are their standards of behavior? And more important, what are their expectations for communication? How are they going to communicate? What tools are they going to use to communicate? How long will it take between when somebody says a text and when we have to respond? Or how long will I have to wait to hear back on an email? These are the expectations that should be set up front. And it's good. It helps the team to actually create this shared identity. And something that Lauren talked about is having them define a team name, which is a little thing, but having a team name makes them feel like they're a part of something. So a real quick one is have everybody in the team, when they get together in their breakout rooms as teams, have them tell a joke or a funny story, go around. These should be very quick. They should be ones that can be told in the workplace, of course. And if you're going to do this, make sure people know about it ahead of time, because I am terrible with jokes. I have like 2, though my kids tell me I have a lot of really bad dad jokes, and my students don't like to hear those most of the time. So then another one that's really quick is to have people share something that team members don't know. This works better when teams know each other better, when the members have been together for a while. And in face-to-face times, you can have them write pieces of paper, write something on a piece of paper, you collect them all, put them in a hat, and then read them one at a time. There are ways to do this online, such as have them all quickly email you or chat with you something, and then you can read them and have the team do it. So very quick. Now, Lauren and I used to do this when we co-taught, and an example of one is I used to bike my age on my birthday every year, and she used to use that one. So that was something people didn't know. One that's long, but a great introductory exercise that we've done is collecting who am I slides. Have each of your students fill out a 1-page PowerPoint with their name on it and just images of their life. So for me, you'd see me skiing or on mountain bike patrol or with my kids or paddling or all these things I do. And then a St. John Fisher logo and my book titles and things like that. And then I can go through it quickly. Good way to build teams. Again, take some time to go through it all. So you'd have to have time to develop that. And something you could use up front in a class or in your program early in your curriculum. A quick one, especially in pandemic time, we're all binge watching shows. I know Liz and I have several shows we've binge watched lately. So Liz is my wife. So very quickly have people share a show that they've been binge watched. It just makes for some fun conversation. Now, if you haven't used Kahoot, especially if you want to focus a team on content or things that they should have learned, Kahoot is a wonderful tool. So it's really quick. You can set it up. There's a free version of it. You set it up ahead of time. And our students have really loved doing things on Kahoot. Now, Lauren talked about her favorite pet in Bring a Pet to Team Meeting Day, which, I seem to bring Calvin whether I want it or not. So Calvin walks across my keyboard and sometimes sleeps on it to answer your chat question. So, have your team members bring a pet to a team meeting. It should be quick, should be holding up their paws and making them smile, whatever it is, but it should be quick and it shouldn't be a pet that's there all the time, unlike Calvin and Lawrence and my meetings with Lauren. And then finally, a really quick one again is who is your hero? And it doesn't have to be something huge that,
Dr. Fauci.
Gandhi or Fauci now, my hero. It could be they come up with something. So these are very quick team building ideas. And now next, Lauren is going to talk about the importance of virtual tools.
And one of the things that I am learning about virtual tools is today there's a little bit of a lag in pressing enter and the slide changing. So I apologize for some of that, but the virtual tools, you guys mentioned this in the beginning, really important in terms of knowing your tools and using both asynchronous and synchronous tools and the pros and cons of each. You may be surprised to know that our students don't always know the difference between those two. So Tim and I did a project in our group dynamics class, and the students had to use 2 asynchronous tools and 2 synchronous tools. 4 out of the 5 groups said that they used Google Docs as a synchronous tool. And they thought if they got on there and they were editing the document and somebody else from the group was on there, that that made it synchronous. And so we had to talk specifically about the tools that were available to them and how they could use them. So make sure that they understand that and also how to use them. A lot of our students don't even know all the functionality that Blackboard has. And a lot of them, in spite of the fact that they've had a lot of remote learning, they don't understand exactly how Zoom works. And one of the things I found out when we started classes in August is I had students who didn't know how to share their screen, didn't know how to mute and unmute themselves. So it takes some time to go through that. And they should know something when they sign up for online classes. I think there's a little tutorial or something they're supposed to take, but we can't actually be sure that that's going to happen. You've got to teach to the tools so that they understand, and you're modeling the use of the tools. And one of the things when we went online that I had to work on was how do people give presentations using Zoom? And I spent so much time practicing myself so that I could create a tutorial for the students on how does a team present over Zoom? How do you share your slides? How do you show a video as part of your presentation? Do you know how to enable the video and optimize the audio? And I just went crazy for a while figuring it out. I kept recording myself, going back and seeing what had happened. And I should have saved those for a bloopers reel. It would have been a lot of fun. But the whole idea is we can't assume the students know how to use these tools. Also, when class is over, you can't assume that they're going to be using those same tools. So when the group is done meeting within your class, they might all go on FaceTime and talk to each other. Or Google Meet is right there now when they're in the Google Drive. So they can use that easily. In fact, one time Tim and I got an invitation to join a Google Meet team meeting, and we hadn't used it before. So we were kind of back and forth, like, did you get that invitation? Did you click on it? What time is it? You know, just kind of trying to figure it out. And a lot of them will be texting, and you need to be aware of whether or not they're texting each other, like everybody in the group, they have a group chat, or is one person texting another person? Is there something else going on? I mean, that relates back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but just being aware of the tools they may be using. And I put in Microsoft Teams here because we don't have access to it at Fisher, but my sister teaches at a large university and said that it's really great for working with groups because you can easily hop from one group to the other. And I know Anne mentioned that they talked about it was easier to manage the groups because you have so many groups that you have to deal with. But as you visit breakout rooms, there's always that lag, or you have to wait to get into the breakout room. So I'm hoping at some point we might have access to Microsoft Teams, because that would be really helpful for us to do more effective group work that way. So 2 other components involved in you dealing with some of the virtual issues have to do with organization and leadership, and those are Tim's areas of expertise.
So organization, as you all know now, teaching classes online is so important as the instructor and for the student. So as a classroom instructor, I find I have to remain far more organized in my online classes. I have to have a plan, and that plan needs to be laid out much further ahead of time than when I'm teaching face-to-face. Now, as an instructor, just like you have to have a plan for your class, you also have to have a very clear plan for the teams, knowing ahead of time, as we said before, how you're going to measure things, the rubrics you're going to use, and when deadlines are, so you can continue with those multiple check-ins that we talked about last time. Keep connecting to those teams, checking in with them, finding out what's going on, and maybe have some intermediary goals that they have to reach. It really helps as an instructor having that plan ahead of time. And having that plan ahead of time will help your students to stay organized. So keep paying attention to what's going on with the students so you can track what's happening. Check in on team meetings once in a while. Give them informal or formal feedback about where they are on the project, and keep putting those deadlines out there and make sure they have access to all the deadlines from early on so that they can stay on track, because organization will help them to succeed as a team when working together. Now, another issue in group projects online is trying to get somebody who will lead the project who understands virtual work. Any leader needs experience, confidence, and willingness. When somebody's leading a project for one of your classes, you don't want somebody who's confident but unwilling, or experienced but not confident. You want somebody who's experienced, has some idea about what they're doing, who really feels they can be the leader, and who's willing to take on that role. When working online, not only do you need somebody who's experienced in the task, who is prepared and knows what they're doing, but also who is prepared to work online and knows the virtual tools. Now, one of the things that we have to help you on our website is a leadership assessment tool that we've used. Now, we've used it in ways where we've given it out to students so that they can self-assess their leadership and understand who might be best to lead the project team. We've also done our own leadership assessments and then fed that information to the team so they know who self-reports that they might be a better leader. Now, you can also appoint a leader, and that can work, but usually it's better to allow it to develop from the team itself rather than force it down upon them. But sometimes as the instructor, you have to make it clear that there needs to be one person, and maybe not call them a leader. Maybe a team facilitator is a better word, makes them feel better. But somebody who is the one who is keeping the group moving forward, at least for the next 2 weeks. And maybe that role should switch after that, but there needs to be a plan for who is going to keep that team moving forward. So that is helping you to work team projects online. We're going to the same place that we did in our last professional development seminar, ending with what can you use? So take 2 minutes and think about 2 ideas from today's program that you think you could use in your classes. Well, I would say soon, but it's the end. So you're ending soon.
February.
February or whenever you're back in class. So 2 minutes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Minnie.
So in that leadership role, have you ever tried saying, okay, there's 3 roles here, so that you're not picking out one person? Do you ever assign like this person is in charge of this and this person is in charge of something else, or is it better to have one person?
Okay, so this is a good question, and we talk in detail in our book about roles and how to set up roles. And there are multiple roles that you can set up, and yes, they should be spread out, absolutely. Now, we don't assign them, we say what the roles should be, and we're pretty we really like it to bubble up from the team. So here's what the roles need to be. You need to decide who's going to be each one of these roles, and then give that information back to us. So that's how we handle it. And yes, we do collect that information explicitly, sometimes even written. So good. Okay, 2 minutes starting now.
Okay, before Tim puts you in your breakout rooms, I'm just going to piggyback on the comment that he made in response to Mindy's question. Is one of the things that we have done also is we've spent time specifically visiting groups and when they're having a team meeting. So we have a section in our group dynamics class about how to run a meeting. And so we give them time to have meetings and we visit them. And when we do, then we check in about the whole leadership thing. Like, where is the agenda? Who's put the agenda together? What roles have people taken on? So one of the things we talked about last time was just having those multiple check-ins, but the leadership role kind of comes out there. So as a group in your breakout room, discuss the ideas you have and share as a group one thing. Maybe if you've got really great ideas, 2 things would be fine. And so we're going to give you 5 minutes to do that. All right, welcome back, everybody. So let's hear from room 1. What kind of things did you talk about? What would you like to share? You didn't pick a person?
Kahoot is good. We should buy the school copy, the paid premium version of Kahoot. Actually, Mindy offered. I haven't tried it yet, but yeah. And invest the time. If we're serious about team working, grow that ability among students, we need to invest time upfront at the beginning of the semester or the course to really grow the groups.
That's good. That's good. And it's, you know, it's hard to do. Of course, now we've got a bigger break, so that gives you some opportunity to maybe work on that a little bit more. Okay. Anything else from room 1? Okay, let's go to room 2.
I think to kind of echo the theme of what Fang was saying there, one thing that came up at the end of our room was, you know, that it's a shame that we don't have more longitudinal projects. A lot of them are, you know, I have 50 minutes in this class, and I want to do these icebreakers and invest more time in the planning of it. But if it's a short class period, and we were kind of thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could design something that is more longitudinal so that they have time to focus on that. And the other thing that came out of our group was really multiple themes around the idea of breaking it in smaller chunks, you know, allowing them to have more guidance, whether it's assigning, you know, having them assign those leadership roles, or giving them little mini assignments along the way of come up with your group norms, and then, you know, put together, you know, a get to know you thing. That doing that would likely help students have more direction instead of being paralyzed of, oh, I've got this topic and I just have to do it and I don't know where to start. It guides them a little bit more without holding their hand too much.
That's a really good point. It also relates to the fact that, you know, first of all, you do a lot of team teaching, which limits the time that you have with the individual classes, but also you're focused so much on the content, and what about, you know, the learning the group dynamics along the way. And it doesn't just come by osmosis, you know, you really need to kind of teach that sort of thing. So in terms of some of those team teaching classes, being able to set groups up, you know, early on in the semester for the whole class may be one way to do it. I know some of the pharmacy schools do a lot of that kind of stuff during orientation time. So something to think about. Okay, anything else that anyone wants to mention from the discussions? Okay.
So one final piece here is we will be sending an evaluation form to all of you, to anybody who was in any of these sessions or who watched it on YouTube. We'll do that along with the link to the YouTube video for this one, and along with the PowerPoint slides. We'll send those, of course, out too. So please give us some feedback. We'd love to hear more about it. We'd love to hear what you think about our book too. So please feel free, if you've gotten the book, to give us some feedback about that, or leave it on Amazon, because we're really looking for reviews on Amazon.
So we are happy to answer any other questions that people have now.
Does this tag team work? I mean, I like the tag team, how you two work together to lead group work. Do you have any comments about that setup, if we can afford it?
Well, the tag team works really well if you plan your presentations and actually practice them. I mean, we both know the content, and we both could deliver any one of these slides. And we do that on purpose because of the technology glitches. If something were to go wrong and I was to drop out, Lauren could handle the whole thing. But we do plan our tag team. If you saw our notes for this, they're very detailed about what's coming next and introducing the next thing. And I'm going to give Lauren some credit here. I've learned a lot from Lauren in terms of presenting. And we if you're not on LinkedIn with us, if you're not connected to us, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, because every Tuesday we put up a blog post, and we tag team on that too. We put out a blog post on some content that's related to the book and team development processes. And one of the ones that Lauren put out recently was about presenting as a team. And she does this also in our class, how to present as a team. And she's really good. She knows her stuff about this. So that's where I'm giving her a lot of kudos for.
Yeah, you are. Wow, that's really embarrassing. But
Lauren,
thank
can we
you.
just invite you now that you're retired? Just come along when we teach class. Can we have you as a
You know, I have a soft spot in my heart for the pharmacy students, so
it really break up the rhythm, monotone, right? Because an individual instructor, it gets boring after a while. So,
right, and it's harder, of course, online to engage the students and get discussion going and that sort of thing. So that can make it difficult. But one thing is always, like, even though we know all this content, before we do one of these, we always practice. And this isn't the first time we've talked to a group about this topic, but we always schedule a practice time. Even if we say, oh, yeah, you don't need to practice that slide or something, we still run through it. We do the timing because we're so tightly timed with you. And we are always on early to make sure that we can see and hear each other and the lighting's good and all that kind of stuff. So we must have sent the slides back and forth at least 10 times before we finalize them. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you for all the efforts you put in.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. It was our pleasure.
And by the way, we don't send the slides back and forth that many times when we teach. I will.
No, that is true. And
it is a little less, though we do send them back and forth. We don't do it to that extent.
Actually, when we team teach, we actually have one person who's really like primarily responsible for the day. And then we always have an agenda in front of us. And even when the other person doesn't have to do very much, they're always there too. So it kind of keeps that continuity together. And I know you guys have a lot more competing for your attention than arts and sciences people do. Other questions that we can answer for you?
Well, I just quick comment on, what you just said, Lauren, that it would be good to have all team members, teaching that class to be present at the same time. That's a wishful thinking, but
right.
I think it's very good, not just for the students, but also for the team members, because, for example, I have experience with integrated courses, and stuff. It was very hard to have all team members for that course to be attending each of the other faculty presentations or lectures. But that would be ideal, because I always say that the instructors have to have the same picture as the students getting from us individually, but again, this is a wishful thinking, and right. I have several examples how well it can work when there's more than just the presenting faculty, but somebody else in the classroom, because there are questions that come up, and the interaction with the students is excellent that way. It's truly teamwork, right?
Right. And we both know exactly what's going on, so that there's an issue with the team and the other thing is we do a lot of in-class exercises, application exercises, and it's helpful because then we can refer back to it. So I can say, well, when Dr. Franz did the leadership exercise, you guys found this happen. So you're right. It is really great if you can work it out that way.
And even if physically you cannot be, one of the advice I gave to my team was that please make sure that when you lecture, say, I know that Dr. Zhao, for example, has presented to you the structure of this and this medication and so on. So then even if physically that other team member is not in the classroom, I think it's really important to let students know that you as team members are communicating, and you know what the other team member is teaching.
Yeah, good point. Excellent.
Yeah. Other questions?
Well, if you have no other questions, again, you can, get in touch with us either individually or together at our Gmail. But also on the website, there are resources there. So in addition to our blog posts, we post forms and things like that. So last time we talked about the importance, for example, of peer evaluations. We've got peer evaluation forms up there. Tim talked about his leadership assessment that he uses and his classes. And so we've got those kinds of resources up there that people can go ahead and look at those and use them. They're available for you to use. We're freely sharing. So we want to thank everybody for today, and just
Thank you.
be looking for a message from Cindy with the content for today in the evaluation form. So that would be really good.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Stay well,
thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.